Let's start off by crediting South Florida. They played with the appropriate level of force and competitiveness. Really did a great job.
Nobody saw this level of absolute chaos coming, but the entire landscape of women's basketball is currently standing on the edge of a cliff, and the Golden Goose might just be the one to push it over. For months, fans have watched a quiet, bubbling war happening right in front of the cameras. But what was going down in the shadows was a million times more toxic. We were talking about billion-dollar television deals, massive egos, historic levels of jealousy, and a breaking point that has finally been reached. The rumors swirling right now aren't just about a player wanting a trade or asking for a few extra days off. The word echoing through the locker rooms and executive suites is that Caitlin Clark is prepared to pull the plug entirely and resign from the WNBA. And the wildest part? The confirmation of this terrifying reality didn't come from some random sports blog. It slipped right out of the mouths of the very people who tried to keep her down in the first place. Specifically echoing from the Team USA coaching camp, did T.O. understand how he got to a place where the most famous basketball player on the planet is ready to walk away from the league she just saved? You have to look at the absolute crash out happening within the players' union right now. It is a story of greed, sabotage, and a young prodigy who finally realized she holds every single card in the deck. But this brewing storm didn't just start with a contract dispute. The bad blood was poured months ago by the very establishment that was supposed to protect her. And the foundation for this massive fallout was laid before Caitlin even played her first professional game, specifically through the hostile actions of Team USA coach Cheryl Reeve. When the Olympic roster was announced and Clark's name was mysteriously missing, the establishment tried to play it off as a standard basketball decision. They claimed she lacked professional experience, that the veteran players had earned their spots through years of loyalty, and that the rookie simply hadn't proven herself in the big leagues yet. But anyone with eyes could see the absolute pure spite dripping from the decision. Reeve had a documented history of making passive-aggressive comments about the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. At one point literally telling fans to pump the brakes on the hype and suggesting that the league had plenty of other stars who deserved the spotlight. When the media pressed the Team USA camp about the undeniable viewership and ticket sales Clark would bring to Paris, the responses were incredibly dismissive. They essentially told the world that they didn't need her, that the gold medal was guaranteed regardless, and that they weren't going to turn the national team into a marketing circus just to appease new fans. This wasn't just a roster snub. It was a loud, deliberate message from the old guard of the WNBA to the new face of the sport. They wanted to humble her. They wanted to remind her that no matter how many millions of people tuned in to watch her shoot from the logo, she was still at the bottom of their established hierarchy. But ignoring the biggest star in the world comes with a heavy price. And the backlash was immediate and brutal. While the Olympic Committee was busy patting themselves on the back for defending the honor of the veterans, the actual reality of Clark's rookie season was turning into an absolute nightmare on the hardwood. What was supposed to be a triumphant entry into professional basketball quickly morphed into a terrifying physical gauntlet. We aren't just talking about tough defense or rookie hazing. We're talking about targeted, deliberate attacks that crossed the line from competitive to genuinely dangerous. Players were headhunting. You had blindside hits, elbows to the face, and flagrant shoves that sent her crashing to the floor, all while opposing players cheered and celebrated the violence. And the officials seemed to swallow their whistles, allowing a level of physical assault that would never be tolerated against any other marquee player in the league. That it became incredibly obvious that a silent bounty had been placed on her head by veterans who were absolutely furious that this rookie was stealing their shine. They resented the chartered flights. They hated the sold-out arenas that were entirely filled with fans wearing number 22 jerseys. And they despised the fact that the entire financial future of the league was suddenly resting on the shoulders of a 22-year-old girl from Iowa. The locker room culture across the league was toxic, fueled by incredibly bitter legends who refused to pass the torch. And through it all, the Players' Union, the exact organization designed to protect athletes and ensure a safe working environment, stayed incredibly quiet. They didn't condemn the targeted attacks. They didn't demand better officiating. And they certainly didn't come to the defense of the player who was single-handedly paying their salaries. The hypocrisy of that silence completely exploded just a few weeks ago when the WNBA, the players' union, officially decided to opt out of their collective bargaining agreement. This is the union crash-out that has sent shockwaves through the entire sports world. For years, WNBA players have been demanding higher pay, better benefits, and a larger share of the revenue. Now, thanks entirely to the massive influx of viewers, sponsorships, and astronomical television deals brought in by the Caitlin Clark effect, the union finally has the leverage to demand a completely new financial structure. They want millions more in the salary cap. They want guaranteed luxury travel. And they want a piece of the massive broadcasting pie. But here's the absolute sickening irony of the situation. The union reps and the veteran players are actively using Clark's viewership numbers to negotiate their massive new paydays while simultaneously refusing to acknowledge her impact or protect her on the court. They are essentially holding the league hostage, demanding a massive slice of a pie that they did not bake. The absolute audacity of the union to crash out of their contract and demand historic wealth while their members are still taking cheap shots at the very woman generating that wealth is mind-boggling. It's a level of greed and resentment that has fractured the league behind the scenes. The veterans want the Caitlin Clark money, but they want the Caitlin Clark phenomenon completely erased from the narrative. They want to pretend that this sudden financial boom is just a natural evolution of the league rather than a direct result of one single player changing the gravity of women's sports forever. But that incredibly arrogant strategy completely backfired when they realized that Caitlin isn't trapped in their ecosystem. Unlike the veterans who have spent decades fighting for scraps and relying on the WNBA for their livelihood, Clark is operating on a completely different financial stratosphere. Her rookie WNBA contract pays her a ridiculously low sum of around $76,000 a year. That is literal pocket change compared to the tens of millions of dollars she brings in through massive endorsement deals with global brands like Nike, Gatorade, and State Farm. She does not need the WNBA's paycheck to survive, to thrive, or to maintain her status as a global icon. In fact, playing in the WNBA is arguably the worst financial and physical decision she could make right now. She is risking severe injury every single night against resentful veterans, flying across the country to play in front of hostile crowds, and enduring a relentless media circus, all for a base salary that barely covers the cost of her security detail. The realization that she holds absolutely all the leverage is finally dawning on the league executives. If she decides that the physical abuse, the union drama, and the sheer disrespect aren't worth her time, she can simply walk away. And that isn't just a theoretical threat. It is a very real, very dangerous possibility that has completely panicked the powers that be. The moment she removes herself from the equation, the sold-out arenas vanish. The billion-dollar television deals get severely renegotiated, and the massive new salary cap the union is desperately fighting for completely evaporates in a thin air. The threat of resignation became a terrifying reality for the league with the sudden aggressive emergence of alternative playing options. Rumors have been swirling at light speed about the new, unrivaled 3-on-3 league, spearheaded by stars like Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier. This new private venture is heavily funded and is actively recruiting the biggest names in the sport, offering them massive multi-million-dollar payouts for just a few months of work in the off-season. It is the perfect escape hatch. Reports have leaked that incredibly aggressive, record-breaking offers have been slid across the table to Clark's management team. We are talking about money that makes her entire WNBA rookie contract look like a joke. Furthermore, the overseas markets in Europe and Asia, which have historically paid women's basketball players millions of dollars, are watching this domestic drama unfold with massive smiles on their faces. They know that if the WNBA continues to alienate their biggest draw, an international team could easily swoop in, offer her a massive guaranteed contract, and then treat her like absolute royalty without the toxic drama of the American League's veteran jealousy. Why should she stay in a league where the union takes her money while letting their players physically assault her? Why should she play under coaches and executives who clearly harbor deep-seated grudges against her. The answer is becoming increasingly obvious. She shouldn't. And according to terrifying whispers leaking from inside the highest levels of women's basketball, she is finally ready to pull the trigger on her exit strategy. This is where the entire narrative reached a boiling point, and where the supposed confirmation from the Team USA camp completely shifted the power dynamics of the sport. As the union negotiations started getting incredibly messy and the threat of Clark joining a rival league grew stronger, the tone from the establishment suddenly and dramatically changed. The exact same coaches, including voices closely associated with Cheryl Reeves' camp, who previously dismissed her impact and defended leaving her off the Olympic roster, suddenly started backpedaling at an embarrassing speed. Internal leaks began surfacing, suggesting that the national team and league officials were in absolute panic mode. Insiders revealed that back-channel conversations were happening, acknowledging that Clark's camp was dead serious about stepping away if the league didn't immediately clean up its act, protect its star, and force the union to show some DMN respect. The sheer terror of losing her caused a massive crack in the establishment's armor. It was a massive slip-up, a panicked admission that they had pushed her too far and that the rumors of her resignation were not just internet gossip, but very real strategy being discussed by her legal and management teams. They realized that by allowing the union to crash out and the veterans to run wild, they had inadvertently handed Clark the perfect excuse to simply pack her bags and let the entire WNBA financial structure collapse in her absence. The coaches' camp, which once stood as the ultimate symbol of veteran superiority, was suddenly forced to swallow their pride and admit that without number 22, the entire ship was going straight to the bottom of the ocean. The brilliance of this maneuver cannot be overstated. By maintaining her silence publicly while letting her management team flex their incredible leverage behind closed doors, Clark has effectively neutered the entire veteran establishment. The players who spent the entire season throwing elbows and talking trash to the media are suddenly realizing that their impending pay raises are entirely dependent on keeping the woman they hate happy. The union, which thought it could strong-arm the league into a massive new contract by holding a strike over their heads, suddenly realizes that a strike means nothing if the main attraction has already left the building. Caitlin doesn't need to throw a tantrum. She doesn't need to complain to the media about the unfair officiating. And she certainly doesn't need to beg for respect from players who are terrified of her shadow. All she has to do is look at her watch, look at the multi-million-dollar offers sitting on her kitchen table from rival leagues, and simply shrug her shoulders. The threat of her resignation is the ultimate checkmate. It forces the league to institute stricter, flagrant foul rules. It forces the referees to actually protect her. And it forces the incredibly bitter veterans to bite their tongues and smile for the cameras. As the dust settles on this massive power struggle, one thing is absolutely crystal clear. The old guard try to break the rookie. They try to crash the system and steal the profits. But they completely underestimated the silent, overwhelming power of a superstar who simply doesn't need them. Whether she actually signs on the dotted line to leave or simply uses the threat to completely bend the WNBA to her will, the entire basketball world is watching in absolute awe. The power dynamic has officially shifted forever, and the veterans are about to find out exactly what happens when you bite the only hand that has ever bothered to feed Bill.